Down there, inside a perfectly ordinary house, sat a desk in a spare bedroom. A man named Jose Alejandro Zamora Yrala worked alone at that desk. The company he ran from it was called AOG Technics. To the outside world, AOG appeared to be a standard, functioning broker of aircraft engine components. There were no warehouses attached to this house, no assembly lines, and no heavy machinery. Yet, between January of 2019 and July of 2023, that single spare bedroom generated over £7 million in revenue. Later investigations by the Serious Fraud Office would reveal a stark reality. To understand the blind spot, we have to look at what Zamora was actually selling. AOG Techniques dealt in commercial aircraft engine components, the complex, highly engineered pieces of metal that keep passenger planes in the air. Specifically, the fraud targeted parts destined for the CFM56 engine. This is not some obscure piece of hardware used by a handful of operators. It is the most widely used commercial aircraft engine in the world. The CFM56 is the primary power plant for the Boeing 737NG and the Airbus A320ceo. If you have flown on a passenger jet in the last 20 years, you have almost certainly flown on one of these two aircraft. A single man, operating out of a spare bedroom with zero physical infrastructure, was feeding unverified hardware directly into the supply chains of the most ubiquitous passenger jets on Earth. Airlines routinely buy used engine parts rather than brand new ones. Engine components are incredibly expensive, and they aren't disposable. When an older engine is retired, its parts are inspected and resold in what's known as the used serviceable material market. This entire secondary market is held together by a single piece of paper, the Authorized Release Certificate, or ARC. The ARC does exactly one thing. It proves that a specific used part has a documented history, that it has been rigorously inspected, and that a certified professional has verified it is entirely safe to install in an engine carrying passengers. You can hold a heavy titanium turbine blade in your hand, physically feel its weight, and closely examine its edges, but you cannot physically see its fatigue history. The durability of the metal is irrelevant without the administrative trust system that tracks it. The aviation industry engineers its planes to survive lightning strikes, bird strikes, and extreme turbulence. But the ultimate safety of the used parts market relies entirely on the blind assumption that a piece of paperwork is telling the truth. Zamora exploited that assumption from his computer. He took the genuine certificates issued by original manufacturers, companies like Safran, and doctored them. By digitally altering genuine certificates, he created false memos of shipment, making it look like AOG had purchased the parts directly from the manufacturer. There is an inherent flaw in this kind of forgery. If a buyer ever took the time to call the manufacturer and cross-reference the forged ARC with their actual shipping records, the entire operation would instantly collapse. To protect the forged paperwork, Zamora built a second layer of deception. He fabricated an entire corporate hierarchy around himself, inventing fake employees to handle customer inquiries. When airlines or repair shops emailed AOG Technics to ask a question or validate a shipment, they didn't speak to a lone guy in a house. They received prompt professional replies, signed by non-existent quality managers and sales directors, complete with official corporate email signatures. He gave his customers exactly what they expected to see. By perfectly mimicking the bureaucratic texture of an established supplier, Zamora weaponized the industry's own administrative habits, effectively turning an empty desk into an invisible, trusted corporate institution. For over 4 years, a system worked flawlessly. AOG Technics sold more than 60,000 aircraft engine parts, wrapping the vast majority of them in entirely forged certification. Each of those 60,000 parts entered the real world, shipped out and logged into inventory. They were seamlessly integrated into repair shops and eventually bolted onto active CFM56 engines. The most unnerving detail of this entire period is the total lack of dramatic consequence. There were no sudden engine malfunctions. Planes didn't fall from the sky. No mechanical failure sounded an alarm. Every day, commercial passengers flew their scheduled routes, sitting just a few feet away from unverified engine components, blissfully unaware that the safety of those parts had been validated on a home computer. The immediate danger was never a visibly broken piece of metal. It was the total, silent corruption of the safety record keeping the global fleet in the air. A 4-year operation generating millions of pounds finally broke in the summer of 2023. Despite 60,000 unverified parts in circulation, the catalyst for discovery was remarkably small. A single technician, working at a single airline, noticed an anomaly in a piece of paperwork and decided to ask a question. That single question shattered the illusion. The UK Serious Fraud Office intervened, dismantling the fake corporate hierarchy and exposing the true scope of the doctored certificates. Airlines and repair operators worldwide suddenly had to scour their supply chains, grounding planes to locate unverified parts that had successfully bypassed every safeguard. A global crisis traced directly back to one desk in Surrey. We build airplanes to withstand the physical extremes of the atmosphere, but the AOG Technics fraud proved that a hyper-regulated global aviation network has a much softer vulnerability, the baseline human assumption that a signed piece of paper is telling the truth. Back in the summer of 2023, standard maintenance work was proceeding as usual inside a sprawling, brightly lit aviation hangar. A maintenance technician at TAP Air Portugal was verifying the paperwork for a specific part, a newly purchased component for a CFM56 engine, manufactured by CFM International. Instead of filing the document and moving on, the technician noticed a detail on the certificate that seemed off. She paused the process. She decided to pick up the phone and call Safran, the company listed on the paperwork, to ask if the document was genuine. This single critical decision to check the source was the one action a 4-year fraud scheme relied on never happening. Safran's corporate office confirmed the technician's suspicion. The certificate was a complete fake. The company immediately alerted regulatory authorities, turning a local inquiry about a single part into an active international safety alert. Within weeks, the documentation that AOG Technics had used to maintain a facade of safety for 4 years was identified as worthless. International aviation agencies mobilized quickly, issuing synchronized warnings regarding any engine components distributed by AOG Technics. The UK's Civil Aviation Authority, the FAA in the United States, and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency all coordinated to address the threat. The response on the ground was immediate. Major airlines began pulling aircraft out of scheduled service to physically inspect their engines and systematically replace any components that could no longer be fully verified as safe and airworthy. The list of affected carriers spanned North America, Europe, and Oceania, including Delta, American Airlines, Southwest, Ryanair, WestJet, and Virgin Australia. CFM International filed suit in the London High Court, demanding that AOG Technics release its full transaction records to determine exactly how many parts had been sold and to whom. Investigators followed the trail, identifying over 100 aircraft and 180 CFM56 engines containing parts traced to AOG. This coordinated purge of the global supply chain eliminated any theoretical risk from the hardware. On December 6, 2023, the investigation reached its origin point, as investigators from the UK's Serious Fraud Office and the National Crime Agency swiftly arrived at a quiet residential address. This was the home where AOG Technics operated, and where investigators believe Jose Zamora invented fictional employees and forged their signatures. Following Zamora's arrest, the company's website and digital presence went dark almost immediately. The man who spent years answering customer questions through a cast of fictional managers stopped answering anything at all the moment law enforcement intervened. In February 2026, after a 2-year investigation involving authorities in the UK and Portugal, Zamora stood before Southwark Crown Court for sentencing. The final figures revealed the fraud scope: over 60,000 parts sold with forged certificates, generating £7 million in fraudulent revenue. But the industry cost was far higher. The SFO placed total damages at £39 million due to grounded planes and replacements. Zamora pleaded guilty to fraudulent trading. The court sentenced him to 4 years and 8 months in prison. Beyond the financial damage, the prosecution focused on the true weight of the crime: the introduction of systemic, unverified risk into a global safety network. After the sentencing, SFO Director Emma Luxton stated that Jose Zamora's operation had jeopardized public safety on a global scale. It is a notable reality of this case that no engine failed and no passengers were harmed during those 4 years. The danger remained silent, existing entirely in the gap between a forged certificate and the truth of the hardware it described. This scheme was stopped not by a mechanical failure, but by one technician who chose to verify a signature rather than simply trusting the paperwork. The safety of modern aviation depends on this quiet, unyielding diligence, the constant procedural verification that ensures the physical truth matches the documentation.